swarming. So the old ones, now they're all dressed in mourning. I don't watch that much TV. It doesn't mean that much to me. It doesn't take a prophet to see. We're just waiting on that last train. So long.
Hello, and welcome to Rhythm Roast Cafe. Come and join Nick, Will, and me, Danny, our discussion today of something of vital interest to all. Vaccinate, to be or not to be? That is the question. So tonight, I'm going to introduce the subject, and I'll be the host for today. And I'll throw out the opening position. Personally, I think vaccinations are a necessary thing, and I fully trust the system that we have that provides the vaccination to be put upon everybody. The problem I have with it is freedoms. Okay, I don't believe a person should be forced to get vaccinated, but I hear that in the Army you have no choice. You know, at one point after your basic training, especially if they're going to ship you overseas, you have a series of vaccinations and you just have to go through them. I don't see any problem with the vaccinations personally. I have heard of stories, and to me they're all National Enquirer stuff. Okay, stuff that you can. You say, well, what's the standard deviation in the study that you have? I mean, is it plus or minus 3 out of 100? You know, what's the caseload you're going to show me? So anyway, I'll open up the discussion. Anybody have a thought here? And please, if you have a thought out there, let us know. That's what this is all about. This is for you.
We would prefer questions versus just comments. I understand people all have their opinions.
Unless you want to tell me how handsome I look. I mean, that's fine.
That's not going to happen, Dan.
That's not going to happen.
That vaccination is disabled.
All
Hey, well, where you at?
Opening salvo.
Yeah, might be shocking, but I don't totally disagree with Danny here. Again, I think that most vaccines are fine. I kind of disagree on the military. I think that if you're going to sign up to serve, that can be a requirement of service. I think one of the first mandatory vaccine programs was instituted by George Washington in Valley Forge. Again, not like a modern vaccine, but they were using some sort of primitive inoculation method to expose the troops to a virus. I forget what exactly it was.
Boy, I wish Tom was here. That's right up his alley.
Is it really?
Tom would love that. So again,
that.
in terms of military service, fine. Otherwise, I get really caught up with the the anti-vaccine people. I think, there's obviously the regular regimen, newborn baby, you get the full panel of vaccines. I can understand, I totally sympathize with people who have some objections to it. You want to spread them out maybe. Makes sense to me. If you're doing a scientific study, you change one variable at a time, or else you don't know what caused a problem. Or if you're Catholic and you have an objection to certain common variants of vaccines, some vaccines are made out of fetal cell tissue, but they often have an alternative. They'll be made out of like sheep cells or something, or like eggs or something. It's like, yeah, if you want to get vaccinated for measles, if you want vaccine B instead of vaccine A, I'm fine with that too.
I kind of wonder if I get the impression that more women are worried about the vaccination deal than men, especially mothers, and especially when it comes to kids. Okay, and I heard one mother say that when she's a Christian and Catholic, and when she went to get the kid circumcised, they required a shot of vitamin K or something, or K1 or something about blood bleeding too profusely if you don't have this. And she questioned, the nurse and then the doctor, and they didn't give her answers that satisfied her. They gave her the run-of-the-mill answers. This is protocol. This is what we're used to doing. So I dove a little deeper into the vaccination thing, because her position was, that the doctors and nurses don't know what's inside these drugs. Okay, they just know that the computer screen says to them, for this treatment for this disease or this episode, it needs to have this kind of reaction, or the vaccination to prevent it is this type of vaccination. Okay, and so I looked into it, and they don't trust. It's like everything else now. Since QAnon, okay, nobody trusts anything. Okay, everybody's doing this deep dive. It can't be true. I've heard from somebody else that there's a 3-headed gorilla on the next block. That's the kind of stuff that drives me nuts.
Wait, hold on, which block?
Yeah.
Where?
Where's the circus? Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, I think people are distrusting Big Pharma more and more.
Yes.
Okay, and if Big Pharma is pushing A, B, and C that hasn't been really tried and tested for a period of time, there's a lot of young mothers. I mean, and I haven't done the research, folks. I'm not saying I'm an expert on this, but there seems to be a higher correlation of vaccines and autism, vaccines and other forms of mental health disorders in young children, that I don't know if the studies are there that make people more comfortable in taking these vaccines. When you first have a child, when you have your first kid, and they all tell you, you got to do this and you got to do that, you kind of go with the flow. And I'm wondering if, is there a way that they can test a child before they give it a vaccine to make sure that they don't have a bad reaction to it? I'm not smart enough. I don't know. But I think as a young parent, that would probably allay a lot of fears that, we're going to go through some protocols just to make sure that if we do give your child this vaccine, it's not going to have an adverse effect on them in some other area.
Well, I thought the same as you, and then after this person brought up the K vitamin shot for circumcision, I looked into it deeper, and I wanted to find out what was the process for approving a vaccination. Okay, it's an incredibly long process. I mean, it's not something that's it's still.
Okay, because the COVID vaccine didn't go through a really long process.
That one they rushed through, but almost
Yes,
all
they
other vaccinations aren't rushed through like that.
Okay.
I mean, the process, if you look it up, the process is 3 stages to get to the experimental stage. Okay, you got to first have some research that says what you're going to do has what kind of a probability to accomplish the goal you're looking for. And you got to substantiate that. And then after you've done that substantiation, then you have to do the animal tests. And you have to do a significant number of animal tests. I mean, it's not just we tested 36 rats.
The PETA fans are not going to like to hear that. Our fans from PETA are not going to like to hear that.
Well, I'm sorry. If you like rats, chinchillas, and the sort, that's okay. You can have a few of mice that like to come into my coffee house over here. I've got chaps for them. And anyway, I don't think that they do a sloppy job with the FDA. I think they do a really responsible job. And I want to ask you lawyers one thing. Okay, and here's my spear.
You guys outnumber you, Danny. Be careful.
You guys are very conservative. You're both you both support anti-abortion positions, right? You're both pro-life, correct?
Yeah.
I would say correct. I mean,
I've said I am a pro-life, but I believe that abortion is a necessary evil in a free society.
Well, you have some freedom to you, okay, for other people. I appreciate that. Okay, what I'm saying is, there's a friend of mine that I grew up with. His name is Tony. I'm not going to tell you his last name. He lived down the block from me in Pizza Park. My age, he contracted polio. His parents decided in 54, no, he's not getting it, okay? You could volunteer to not get it, okay? It was before schools made it absolute that you had to have it to go on to another grade. He ended up, I went to visit him because we used to play together, right? People don't understand what polio isn't just the atrophying of your limbs. It's a painful process. He was screaming every day for 11 days straight. 11 days straight. They were sedating him. They were doing massages on him, all kinds of other stuff. This kid was 11 years old. Okay? He ended up with completely atrophied right leg, 50% atrophied left leg. He had to wear braces on both and those cuffs that go up to here with the little handles
Right.
for the rest of his life. The rest of his life. I want to ask you, if I was his guardian, if I was his older brother, I would have petitioned for guardianship. And then I would have sued the parents. But then I read
Well, you would've
someplace
won.
where...
You would have won.
No, I read someplace where the kid can't sue the parents for that.
Right. Respondent superior, parents have the ultimate right, okay? Unless they're unable and unwilling or incapable of parenting their children, they get to parent their children the way they see fit.
So you wouldn't take on that case? You would lose? Is that what you're saying?
I'll earn my money, I won't steal it, okay? And
Mm-hmm.
then you're fighting a losing battle on that one. It's a very, very difficult road to cross in
But
terms
yes,
of
you want to...
taking the decision making away from a perfectly capable parent because you don't agree with their decision.
Well, you
Okay?
got to prove that they're not capable at that point.
That's a very high burden. That's a very high burden to do. That's not an easy thing to do, to show a parent is incapable of making rational decisions, whether you agree with the decision or not. Getting on to, do you think that we are kind of getting over-vaccinated, that we're vaccinating, now we're finding a vaccine for this, and a vaccine for that, and a vaccine for this, when as in the 50s, polio was a horrible, horrible disease. we had we had the poxes, the chicken poxes, and the measles that would have an
Did you ever see a guy with the
tremendous-
mumps?
with mumps. Okay, I mean even
Men?
even
You don't want to get the mumps.
even Robert Kennedy said that, like, no, the measles vaccine is probably a good idea.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah, he even said that. Yeah, he came out. No, I mean,
Did a little bird
as
tell him
much
or
as
what?
everybody wants to think that the guy is a complete wackadoodle, he's not. He's very knowledgeable about stuff, but he's also pretty realistic in terms of what he feels is the right approach in terms of vaccines. He also says, like, listen, there's some of these vaccines. Do we really are we pushing things with big pharma a little too fast? And are we just trying to come up with vaccines so you don't get HPV, or if you don't get this or you don't get that? And are those really, really vaccines that protect the entire populace? Because most of the vaccines, as I understand it early on, were there to protect the entire populace, not just individuals.
Right.
Okay, so now we're getting away from protecting everybody outside of COVID, because COVID was you got to get this vaccine because everybody's got to be protected, and that turned out to be bullshit. Pardon my language. Oop, not supposed to swear on the.
We'll never get an evangelist to come on
Yeah, I
this
know.
program.
I
But
think if you don't do it the first minute, though, it doesn't affect our metrics.
okay. But so now we're just trying to get vaccines that, individual behavior. It'll protect you from this, or it'll protect you from that. And I think that's kind of where it might be getting abused. And Big Pharma is not trusted, as I said earlier. And a lot of people are just going, just because they come out with this vaccine that says, oh, this is going to be great, that doesn't mean it's for me, or that doesn't mean I'm going to really trust it. Listen, the rate of heart disease and heart attacks in men between the ages of like 14 and 35 that took the COVID vaccine rose by 25-30%. I mean, we saw a guy, a football player on national television, just have a freaking heart attack in the middle of the field. Why? Well, we don't want to say it was the vaccine, but he had to get the vaccine.
What was the percentage of people over the age of 60 that died from COVID that had no vaccine? Balance that against the percentage.
Right, but then why don't we
the
try to
but
look
the
at well, who's
vaccine-
getting it? If you're over 65, get the COVID vaccine, Danny.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you're 20
but
now,
the point was, is the vaccine didn't prevent you from getting COVID. That turned out to be a fallacy.
Well, it wasn't 100%.
No, Danny, it's
I didn't get
very
it.
clear.
I got the vaccine and the
No,
booster.
even the Biden administration at the end was admitting that it didn't decrease spread or transmission. It just
Right.
decreased the symptoms
The
if
severity.
you did get
The
it.
severity. Well, that
The
was good enough
severity.
for me.
And it
I'm
might
sure
be good
it was,
enough for
yeah.
some people,
Yeah.
okay?
Well,
But,
you
That's
know
great
what?
for you.
but they're telling my kids that I couldn't go to an NCAA basketball game unless my kids went to the United Center and presented their vaccine card.
And-
And then
and, you
2
know-
weeks before the game started, they go, well, you don't need your
There-
vaccine
there's
card
a-
anymore. And I don't want to give my kids
To
a
an
vaccine.
extent, though, like again, I don't get too worked up about the because again, you say was it 25% increase in the heart attacks?
Something
kids
along
18
that
to
way,
35.
yeah.
It's how many were there to begin with? A 25% increase of a small number. That's like based on the whole population of the country. Might not be that many instances. Which yeah, it's tragic if it happens to anyone. But my point is, if we gave everyone in the country peanuts, we'd have more deaths than that.
Yeah, why all the peanut
So-
allergies? Why is every
Not where I was going with that.
why,
but
why is everybody
Any
why is
substance
every, why all,
that's
why
so
all these
broadly
kids got
distributed.
peanut allergies?
Let me
all of a
ask you
sudden?
something.
Where's that coming from?
Let me ask you something.
Yes, sir.
If they had a vaccination that would prevent ED and male pattern baldness, would you go take it?
I don't have a problem with the male pattern.
Yeah, okay, Don
And I
Corleone over
refuse
here.
to answer the other one.
Yeah.
No, I
You know,
I
ask
don't,
any woman
again, but
who's against-
you're making my point. My point is now we've got vaccines that aren't really there to protect the populace. They're there to just enhance whatever an individual wants.
Well,
Okay,
but
And-
is
and-
there a
and
problem with that?
I don't know. I mean, honestly saying, I don't know. I think that's a little bit more troublesome for me.
If there was a
If they're going to
vaccine,
require you to do it,
If
if
there was
you
a
want to
vac-
take it, that's one thing.
No,
But if
not
they're
to
going to
require
require
you.
you to do it,
if there was a vaccination that prevented female wrinkles in their skin, gave their skin
Oh.
elasticity,
Oh, I'm
you know
not-
that line would be around the block, down the street, and they would be beating each other up to make sure that they didn't get the last dose.
I'm getting in the IPO on that one. Okay,
Yeah.
right? Because we're all going to make money. We're all going to make money on that
I
one.
need to invest in.
Well, that's what I tell kids. What do you want to do when you grow up? Be a chemist. Be a biologist. Go out there and invent something that will stop baldness.
What's the Joe Rogan joke? It's if they had let's say a male enhancement pill that actually worked.
Yeah.
The first OD would happen within 2 minutes, and everyone else would be like, "How many did he take? Give me one less than that."
Yeah. No, but I think a lot of the mistrust of vaccinations has come directly as the mistrust of big pharma has increased.
Well, yeah.
Okay,
But
and
that's
at one point, people trusted the pharmaceuticals. They were the greatest thing since sliced bread. They were only there to help people and
But
heal
it's
the
just
sick.
simple-
And it's just not. Go ahead.
Danny's not talking. Nick, help
I know
him.
it's tough. I know it's tough for him. Go ahead, Danny.
To me, it's symptomatic of a bigger problem. The bigger problem is the country's dipping into being driven by fear. Whether it's fear of a vaccine or fear of Donald Trump or fear of the Democrats or whatever, all the motivation goes to fear. And it starts with advertising on TV and radio, okay? Buy your product now because inflation is going to eat it up and you won't be able to pay for it later. Fear. Give you fear, okay? We want to sell you gold ingots now because your dollar's going to be worth nothing in October next year, right?
Well,
it's all
any-
fear-driven.
any-
And this is the same thing.
Any ad rep will tell you the two things that sell are sex and fear.
Well, yeah, but I
Okay,
think
yeah.
this
No,
country
it
isn't
is.
worried about sex. They're
Fears?
worried about fear.
Oh,
Wow,
no. Sex still sells.
Fear's a great motivator, but I also think distrust is healthy. And the things we're fearing are large institutions. I think, and to Nick's point, I think it's like crazy that this sort of flip has happened. It's back in the 70s. I feel like who's going to be calling out the big pharmaceutical companies and inorganic foods.
Well,
And now it was all the hippies and everyone on the left. Now one of my brothers, he's really conservative, lives in the middle of Arkansas, real backwoods, and he's like,
Has a
well, you know-
double-barrel shotgun?
oh yeah, he's like cast iron only, no seed oils. Like I'm just like, did you throw away your shoes too? Like what's going on here? But the crunchy hippies and like the trad conservatives just kind of like switched at some point. I don't know when it happened.
Well, it's not that. It's a drift towards anarchy on either side. Okay, is what
Well,
it is.
and-
It's a drift away from control issues from whoever it was that was controlling you, whether it was the right or the left. You didn't like it. You're shackling yourself off from it, and you're going to rebel against it.
And I think another thing that came to the forefront during COVID is anybody that tried to talk against the vaccine or question the vaccine, or they were shut down. Okay, and it was very clear that they were not given the opportunity to voice a contrary opinion, which any scientist will tell you is what's necessary for their vaccines, their theories to be proven and accepted, is for people to test them, for people to question them. People weren't allowed to question COVID vaccine.
But it went through the test. I saw the test it went through. It went
You
through.
you said it came out fast, Danny.
Well,
You
it
said
came out fast, but it still went. They tested it fast. Okay, they got their 100 animals first. Okay, passed that test. Then they went to the phase 2, 100 humans. Passed that. Now reliability. You had to do 3 more reliability tests to come up with the same.
Yeah, but I also think they reduce some of the
Do
thresholds,
you-
with that decreases the reliability, the probabilities you're discussing.
Yeah.
If you decrease your sample sizes, then you don't have the same amount of confidence in that outcome.
No, but they had to do it 3 times. They had to do 3 reliable tests to get it to
And
the
you
same
trust
differential.
And who controls those tests?
The what do you call it?
FDA?
FDA.
And you trust the FDA?
Yes.
Trump's
If
FDA?
you can't trust, I'll trust Trump's FDA. I'll trust.
All right, just fact checking.
You know what? We voted for this guy. I can't say that he's not my president. I wouldn't
That's
be an
fine.
American if
I
I
was
said
just
that.
asking.
Okay, he's my president. You guys wanted him. I'm going to see what you can do with him. Okay, I'm fine. All right. Once if he takes away my Social Security, it's guns and knives
We
in
went
the
through this
street.
last
Okay,
week.
but if he stays away from that,
coming for it.
we're okay.
Okay. So, but again, I think there is a lot of mistrust in the way our government runs, the way it operates, even institutions like the FDA, the IRS, the FBI, the Department of Justice. There is a lot of people on both sides of these arguments that distrust them for their own particular reasons,
And they're
Okay.
all one reason. All of it's one reason.
which is
Money. Okay? My tax dollars are
Okay.
paying for this guy's research, which is BS research.
No.
It doesn't do. It's the same
Some of it
reason.
is. They probably
it's
didn't
the
have to
same-
torture all those
It's the same
companies.
reason we have the Middle East problems. Okay? You want to talk about the reef? Right? Middle East problems. The Romans, all they wanted was tax from the Jews. The Jews said, no tax for you, okay? So the Romans caused a great diaspora, and we've been paying for it ever since, okay, with the troubles in the
so.
Middle
So the
East.
Romans came up with the
The Romans
idea of
came up
taxing-
with the idea of taxing, okay? They said, we're giving you roads, we're protecting you from bandits on the street, we're allowing you to have trade, we're allowing you to have all of this societal stuff that we're even letting you deal with your own God, okay? You don't have to kneel
That
before
predates
Jews.
the Romans to get that. You should read
You know,
that.
you know, they said you can
What's
do
that?
whatever you want, but render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, okay?
Christ
And that
said
was
that.
enough, okay? And that's been the problem with society ever since.
Taxes?
Nobody wants to pay taxes, okay? When people tell me, well, these Palestinians have been living there for decades, for centuries. Why should they move? And I say, just
I don't-
raise their taxes 2%. When they threatened to do that in Illinois, people who had lived here in Illinois for 3 generations, all of a sudden were moving to Texas. Okay.
I don't believe that the entire thing is because taxes, because the FDA needs to approve stuff, but they're not the ones that pay for it and do all the research. Okay, that's been the big criticism of big pharma.
No,
is
but you have to show them.
why prices for medicine is so high, because it supports their research and development, which is where they really want to make their money, because
Right.
they get the new patent on the
For
newest
7 years.
Viagra drug, and they cash in on it. Okay, schools, they get a lot of grants, money, and stuff to do a lot of research and whatnot. So
And they partner up with
and
Monsanto and
that's
places like
and
that.
what and my point to circle back is that's where part of the distrust comes. The part of the distrust comes is when you're dumping a lot of money into a drug and it might be what we think it is, and we'll just lobby the senators and we'll go to the FDA and we'll kind of go like, come on guys, now we're going to approve a drug that may pass the muster that we think it's supposed to pass when it may not have. And I
Well-
think that's where the distrust comes in some of this.
I think it comes from more than that. I think what it comes from is these armchair philosophers, the keyboard jockeys that will put something on the internet and say, this has caused this disease in 75
I think you
people
give
I
those
talked
people
to.
too much credit.
No, I'm telling you, it's out there. That's all you
I
got to
think,
do is
and I think you give intelligent people
Too
less
little
credit,
credit?
too little credit, because just because it's clickbait and you click on it doesn't mean that I'm going to go, oh my gosh, look at that, that is so real.
Well-
Okay, no, I think you got to. People are smarter than that, Danny.
I don't.
You don't think so?
I don't.
Well,
I don't.
you know.
I think the collective IQ has been dipping. Okay.
Well, there's no question our kids are getting dumber.
You know, and
Just look at the test scores, but yeah,
okay, we
that's
can
another
we can go
story.
another
Yeah,
story.
yeah,
We can talk
that's-
about education
Yeah, we're
next
not dealing
week.
with
Well,
education.
arguably IQ can't really dip because it's based on a mean off of the average. Like the average IQ is 100 by definition or 110 depending on how you index it. But point well taken.
Well,
Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I this whole to be or not to be vaccine.
Yeah.
It is the personal question as to whether or not you should do it or not do it. Obviously, as a parent, you have to go through those things and determine whether, as a parent, that's what you want to do or whether you don't. I agree with you that I don't think the government should be able to force you to do anything, and people need to live with the consequences of their decisions. I think the whole COVID thing was really, really an eye-opener to people in terms of, do I want to take a vaccine of my own, or do I have to be forced to do it? And if I have to be forced to do it, what happens if it doesn't work for me? What happens if something goes really bad for me on this one, that it wasn't my choice?
But you know, a mantra of these people is a conservative
These people.
mantra.
These people?
These people.
Who's these people?
The conservative anti-vaccination people. Okay.
So anybody who's anti-vax is conservative.
This is
No, he
said
just
the
doesn't care about the liberal
conservative.
ones. He's fine with
The
that. Maybe
liberal
anti-vax.
anti-vaccinated, they don't have this mantra.
Okay.
The mantra I was going to give you is from a famous philosopher, okay? He had two famous quotes. The one famous quote, they even made it into a song, I think. Whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. The second famous quote was, God is dead. Okay? Same
Nietzsche.
guy, Nietzsche. And who was he?
He was a nut.
Hitler's favorite philosopher.
Yeah, he was a nut.
okay?
He was not.
And
Nietzsche was a nut.
those are the, at least that one mantra, the whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger, seems to be the theme for the anti-vaxxers.
Nietzsche also didn't know about radiation sickness. There's a lot of things. Chemotherapy,
Yeah,
cancer.
He was like a hedonist at best.
Also, I think the whole God is dead thing is greatly misunderstood.
Yeah? What was your take on it?
Well, again, the whole purpose is if God is dead, there's no basis for morality anymore. And so the question is, are people capable of creating their own basis for morality? That's where you get the idea of the Superman who's able to determine his own morality.
But didn't they prove that a century before with humanism? Wasn't
No.
that what humanism was all
And
about?
humanism was horribly wrong. I think, I forget who it was. I was listening to a lecture, though, and they basically made the argument that Dostoevsky answered the question before Nietzsche even asked it in Crime and Punishment. Raskolnikov thinks he can justify it. He thinks he's smart enough. He can put it together and he can make the logical argument why it's okay to kill his evil, mean, horrible landlady to get her money. And he's smart enough, he's intelligent enough to form his own morality. And the guilt just destroys him anyways. He answers the question, no, you cannot be your own God. You can't replace God with your own internal sense of
So he's
morality.
an existentialist.
And a lot of people say that's the explanation for all these new wave, new age churches that will accept you for whatever you want to be. God still loves you.
But he
okay?
does.
Well,
Doesn't he?
Well, he does, but he also needs you you also need to be you need redemption. Okay, for those
You do?
Wait a minute. Okay, because again, when they were gonna stone the prostitute, the first thing what did he say? Those who without sin cast the first stone.
Right.
But then what does he say? He tells the woman, "Go and sin no more."
Ah.
Okay, they always forget that part of it. Okay, that's the second part of what God's teaching is. We will forgive you and we will love you.
That's
but
when you
can't
gotta
sin-
reform.
But
Yeah.
you can't keep doing and being sinful and you have to sin no more.
Where
Or
does
else
it
it
say
doesn't mean,
Yeah.
anything.
What's the consequences for sinning again?
God, you
Slipping off the wagon.
You just won't. You won't be.
Does he give you a
accepted
second
into the
chance?
community. God will always give you a second chance.
So
But
should
will
have
you take the second chance?
If you take it and you are genuine, all people will fail. Men, women, whatever. The humanity will fail.
Mm-hmm.
It's a question of do they strive to live His word.
Right.
So-
It's not about
That's
failing
what
to
it
meet
is.
God's standard. It's
Right.
do you turn away from it.
So should a Catholic Church have offered these pedophile priests the opportunity to confess their sins, absolve their sins, and redo their life, or should they punish them?
Of
by
course,
sending-
they should have
Or should
allowed
they
to
punish them to other
Both.
relegate them
Both.
to
Yeah.
the
both.
okay.
Okay, give Caesar what's due Caesar. Yes, in God's world, we will forgive you. Okay, we will love you, but you have to pay your penance, and you have to redeem yourself, and you have to seek redemption, and you can't sin. You can sin no more.
So send
what
them to a
this
Cistercian monastery and have them plant vegetables for the rest of their lives, huh?
Yeah, again, we could say, hey,
Whatever
like
it is.
we can, the church can offer absolution, and at the same time say, but it's too much of a risk that we can't trust you not to go back on that. Like the church, not to conflate the two, obviously, but the church can offer the absolution and say, and also we're just not taking the risk on you being sincere and requesting it.
Well, I
I mean, we
know
had-
they
we had-
can, but should they?
We had a guest
Yes.
here that was a heroin addict.
Mm-hmm.
She will always be a heroin addict, but that doesn't mean she's going to do heroin again. We have people that are alcoholics that will always be alcoholics, but if they don't drink again,
I
they
didn't
will
come here to
never.
get judged, Nick.
They will never fall into that trap again if they don't take another drink. It's the same premise. Last week, when we were done, I asked you guys to watch a video of a doctor that I thought was a pretty fascinating conversation that he had.
They weren't on cancer, right?
There was a guy named Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong
Yeah, I watched it.
with Tucker Carlson, and we're talking about vaccines, and I'm trying to circle back to the topic. And he had a very interesting approach. The conversation was about cancer, causes and treatment of. And the guy is uber wealthy, very successful. He was a surgeon dealing with pancreatic cancers, did the Whipple surgeries, did all of those things. Now his sole focus is doing research and coming up with alternatives to the way we approach dealing with cancer. In a nutshell, what I got out of his conversation was he would rather we concentrate on teaching our bodies to deal
Regenerate.
to teach the right cells in our bodies to attack the wrong cells in our bodies and develop things that do that, and that way we don't need to worry, we don't need to get to the radiation chemotherapies that basically give us a patchwork fix for a while, and then it doesn't work anymore. And we think we're making progress because you're living 5 years versus 3 or 10 years versus 7, but really we're not eradicating the disease out of your body.
Which that is basic. Like your body has some cancer, some deformed cells in it all the time. Was a big
Yeah.
part
All
of
the
that.
time, right?
And your body's normal functioning is what tends to keep those in check, stops them
cells.
from spreading
Right.
into like pure tumors, cancer, full blown cancer. And yeah, no, basically he's talking about improving those systems so that they continue to keep that in check longer. Which again, I think it's a really interesting theory.
Well-
this guy's not a nobody either. He is like a pharma billionaire based on other medical patents he has. Like he is a
Yeah,
reliable
I
source,
kinda-
I feel like.
I kind of have anecdotal evidence on this.
We talked about this, but go
Okay,
ahead. Yeah.
my sister and her husband worked a farm in Alpena, Michigan, and they used a lot of Monsanto stuff, for fertilizer, weed control, all that other stuff. They were both in their late 50s, early 60s when they started both having cancer, okay? She pancreatic cancer, and he had double cancers. He had leukemia first, followed by small cell lung cancer, okay? The double whammy. She is one of these people that do rabbit hole research on the internet, right? She looked at every homeopathic thing that you could get. She settled on doing this They had a kennel. I should say. I'm not going to get into detail, but you need to know this. They had a kennel.
Like
so
a dog kennel?
Dog kennel.
Okay.
So they had access to certain amounts of veterinarian medicine. One of the medicines that they saw on the internet was a dewormer. Thing
Jesus.
that you use the dewormer and in combination with some other homeopathic medicines, and that the premise was that you have a parasite, just like the parasite that the dewormers. Now this guy reminded me of it because he was approaching it as though it was a virus, that this could be a virus, that's developing. So now fast forward over to what I was telling you about, Northwestern University, okay? They have two programs going on. One is genetically targeted fractionated chemotherapy, and the other one is proton therapy. One is more chemicals, and the other one is radiation. Instead of using electrons, they use protons. And the protons are heavier than the electrons, but they don't have as much energy because they're heavier, so they don't do as much collateral damage. The other one, the genetically targeted fractionated chemotherapy, that one is they take the tumor, they take a biopsy of it, they get its genome, and then they take a virus, they hollow out the virus, and they use the splicer, I think they call it. It's the splicer technique where they take
It's like
the
CRISPR?
the DNA, CRISPR, that's
Yeah,
it, CRISPR,
that makes
where
sense.
they take the DNA from the tumor and they splice in specific DNA to the virus cell that targets the tumor. So it will go right after the tumor's receptors, and then they stick that in your bloodstream or in your bone marrow, and that seems to be the another one that.
Well,
I don't know.
it sounds like it's kind of almost like the same premises. Dr.
That's what he
There's some
was
showing,
reminding me.
right, yeah.
Now my sister had the Whipple surgery.
Mhm.
She didn't die of cancer. She died from the Whipple surgery. A very
It's a
difficult,
very
very
dangerous, yes.
difficult surgery, and it's in an area where it tags three organs, and it can burst into the sac. What do you call it? The abdominal sac, right? Once it does that, peritonitis, you're gone, and that's what happens.
So it's right on the liver. One of the three is the liver too. And if
The
you start
liver?
getting cancer in your liver, like that is
Right.
Oof.
Right.
Well,
So the Whipple thing,
his-
it's
No, I mean,
it's a real tough one to go by. And when the doctor says I've performed this, that means he's putting a medal on his chest. I've done something really good. Because not many people do it.
he went so far that when COVID came out, this particular individual we were talking about, they isolated the COVID the COVID virus, and they had came up with, he called a bioshield, and he calls it a bioshield because he doesn't want to call it a vaccine because everybody goes, oh, it's another vaccine, okay?
Originally, he was marketing it as a vaccine
Right.
to get doctors to be more accepting of it,
Right.
even though it wasn't a vaccine.
Right. And he said, he goes, they started injecting it, himself was one, and all of a sudden the FDA calls him and says, can't do this anymore. Okay, and never gave him a reason why, and to this day, 4 or 5 years later, they still won't give him a reason why.
Because he didn't follow the protocols.
They never said
No,
that.
he
but
went
he
through all
offered
the
it.
protocols and
He
he got
did.
to that
He
stage.
did through all 3 phases. He had the 2000.
It was the accelerated light speed procedure because it was during COVID.
Okay.
And was it Moderna and Pfizer got to market at that point?
Mm-hmm.
But they never explained why he had to stop his studies.
Because because Big Pharma, Moderna, and Pfizer, they were already out there. They didn't want to see maybe something that was working a lot more effectively, according to
But they're
him.
not the only ones. He could go to Sandoz. He
Those
could
were
go
the
to
ones.
all kinds of guys.
But he didn't need to. The guy was well established on his own. He didn't need to go to
And
that.
the-
Well, if he
the
didn't
problem
need
is
to, he wasn't getting
But
past
that's
Pfizer
the
didn't shut him
CDC.
down. The
Right.
FDA shut him down.
Shut him down. It was the FDA that shut
And the
him
question is
down.
that they do it on behalf.
And
of
he
Moderna
said,
and
take
Pfizer.
my data, take my stuff, you do it. He goes, I don't care. And they would. So that's part of getting
Sounds
back
like a
to,
job for you, Nick.
well, but it
Why didn't you?
gets
Why
back.
didn't you go get him?
But it gets back to what I was saying earlier, is that a lot of times when we get into this type of stuff, there's a lot of mistrust with the people in charge of making these decisions.
Fear.
It might be fear, Danny, but yeah, it's a mistrust.
Yeah.
Whatever you can call it fear. I'm not just saying don't do it because I'm afraid of it, but people, and we've gotten to the point now where we can't trust our government anymore. I'm sorry,
Oh,
we can't.
come on.
You can't.
I trust
You
him,
never
and,
could.
and,
Wait,
and the
wait,
guy I
wait,
think
wait,
is the
wait,
worst
wait.
president
Danny.
the world has ever seen, and I still
Danny.
trust the government.
Well,
I'm the exact opposite. I think Trump's probably the best president we've had in my lifetime.
And you
I
still
don't
trust
him.
him.
I still don't trust the
That's the
government.
nature
I
of
hope
MAGA
the best.
people. They don't trust, they hate,
They don't hate.
I don't hate.
Or
No,
they
I
don't.
just.
They don't hate. We
I'm
don't
just not going
hate.
to put faith into anything. I'm gonna
Right.
be cautious. I'm going to be skeptical. I think that skepticism is incredibly important. That when you ask someone to trust, you ask them to set aside their skepticism.
But
Danny,
in-
in my practice, okay, and I've been practicing 37 years, okay, I tell people, you should be able to ask me any question about your case, and I should be able to give you an answer. You may not like my answer, but you're going to get an answer. Don't ever accept an answer from me that says, trust me. I tell this to people. I tell that probably from the first time they sit in my office and interview me for a consult. I will tell them that. Don't ever accept an answer from me that says, trust me, don't worry about it, I got it. You deserve an answer. And I think our government should be the same way. If you ask them something, you deserve an honest, straightforward answer that you can trust.
You've never worked for the government, right?
I've worked for the government. I was a public defender
Public
for 6
defender,
years.
okay. That's
And
a-
I've worked again.
That's an independent contractor working for the government.
No, that's not an independent contractor. I was employed by the county, paid by the county.
Okay. I worked
Okay.
for the state of Illinois.
Okay.
8 years.
Yeah.
I worked in corrections. I worked in the Department of Revenue. I worked in welfare. You love that one. In DCFS. Anyway,
DCFS.
Anyway, what I found in government is that you've got a bunch of people that took a test to get into the whatever field it was. Okay.
Do they still do that?
Yeah.
I don't think
well,
so.
when I
I don't think so.
Depends, but
When
if
I-
it's air traffic control and you're a person of color, there's going to be the answers beforehand.
well, the last job I got, I had to take a test. It was
Okay.
for one thing, you had to have at least 2 semesters of
When the government hit
economics.
standards?
Huh?
Government hit standards back then.
Yeah, in order to qualify for the test for the state of Illinois,
Okay.
I had to have at least 18 hours in economics, you know.
Right.
And
So
I
you're in
did.
government.
And I qualified, took the test. They hired 300 of us. Okay, we were supposed to be redetermination experts for the state of Illinois under Dan Walker. Okay, and Dan, way before your time. And our job was to go into the Robert Taylor home and to the one on Roosevelt Road.
Okay.
The other
Whatever.
welfare one. And we were supposed to evaluate whether or not A, there was a man in the apartment, how many actual kids lived there, what the refrigerator looked like, because they were all getting welfare checks.
Okay.
Okay, and we had this list to check off. Okay, did they have food enough to feed the kids that they said they had?
Right.
Were there beds enough? Were there this enough? Were there that? What did the apartment look like? And did you see a man?
Okay.
Okay.
Why were they
And
asking
you're-
if you saw a man?
Because they were hunting for fathers that didn't pay for their kids. And they were assuming that if there was a man there, whether they were married or not, it was the father of at least one
So
of
if there's a
them.
father in the home, you don't get the welfare.
Right.
I've been told it's a conspiracy theory. It's one of my biggest complaints about welfare.
No, if you
Alright.
if they
Yeah.
have 2 parents, well, then they have to check the
They
father's
want to
income.
discourage fathers in the home, and that's the biggest problem with welfare.
And that's still currently happening today. I can tell you from personal experience that it's still happening today that they reduce your benefits if you're a family that's together in a unit.
That's
Which is
crazy.
horrible for the
That's
kids.
crazy.
Sorry
Well,
for the
that was
aside.
my job.
We got comments? We got some comments?
You guys did have a few comments today. You had a few going around. Hep B being required by the FDA in infants versus CDC saying it's not safe unless 18 and older. This is one that mothers have an issue with. Then you had someone else come in. I'm certainly not afraid of vaccines. I'm afraid of people who don't believe in vaccinations, which is why measles is up over 600, more than over twice the number in all of 2024, which someone responded in chat with, for measles, is that environmental from the immigration, or is that just from solely U.S. citizens? It hasn't been proven if sole responsibility is U.S. citizens anti-vaccinating.
You got to watch that percentage intake because there's been a huge outbreak when we never had a measles outbreak. So it's like saying the murder rate in a town went up 200% because there was a double homicide there one year. So it can be a very misleading stat.
I think-
but there has been a measles outbreak. I don't think they've gotten to the root cause of where or why.
Again, there was the
Well, they got
measles
the where,
outbreak.
they don't have the...
Well, they got the
There was the
where
measles outbreak in Texas too,
Texas.
and I know someone was saying it's up. It might be the same outbreak they're talking about, but there's a graph you look 2024 to 2025. There's a big spike, but then someone took the same graph and just brought it out to like 2020. It's like actually like it's such a small number of cases. This is like pretty normal variance.
So that's a result of lack of doing that measles, mumps, rubella shot.
No, if you go back like more than 2 years,
Yeah.
sometimes there's just higher cases because the MMR vaccine it's only like 90% effective.
But what
So
if
you
you-
can
I'm going
have
to
outbreaks
get
by the
my
time that's not
shingles
effective.
vaccine. I haven't gotten that one yet. Okay, and I've been like, do I really need
I'd
it?
get a vaccine for rabies if they had it.
There was an attorney gentleman that got it in his eye, and he's been out of work for 4 months in excruciating pain.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't need to have that.
Did you
right
get a
now.
shingles vaccine?
No, I'm just saying I got to get one. I
Have
want
you
You
to
did-
didn't get a shingles
I
vaccine?
have not gotten it.
Have you
No.
got chicken pox?
I've had it. Yeah.
Oh man,
Yeah.
what's the matter with you?
Yeah,
Time
well, don't
is
jinx
running
me. I'm
out.
going after Easter. I don't want to. I don't like. I got too much to do between now
I
and
know
Easter.
a woman who
I
had
got a guy.
no, she had an unfortunate experience. Okay, because she had the shingles. Well, actually, the herpes zoster affect her unborn child. Okay, she was exposed. She was exposed to it when kids. She was with kids, and the kids had cold sores and stuff, and they exposed the herpes zoster. Now, had she taken the vaccine, it might not have affected her as bad as it did. But when it did, it causes the child to be, I think it was hydroanencephalitic, okay, and life expectancy of maybe 2 years, 2 torturous years, so yeah, I mean, there's, you gotta roll the dice, okay?
No, I'm going to get it. I just don't want to get it now because I don't need. Sometimes people had some really bad side effects from taking it. I don't need to go through that. As soon as Easter's over, I'm going.
My mother had shingles. She cried every day for 2 weeks.
Yeah,
okay?
My boss at one of
Every
our jobs
day.
got it in Florida.
I mean-
She thought she had a heart attack.
Really?
She thought she was having a heart attack. It hurt so bad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and she was in her 60s, 70s at the time. It's just-
But
Yeah.
growing up, did you hear about shingles? I know
my
about shingles.
grandmother had it, but I didn't.
I know what it was.
I didn't know what it
I
was.
heard
She had it on her back. Okay, it was like
Yeah.
a rash. Okay,
Right.
and it didn't. Yeah, I was a young kid. I just got over with chickenpox. I probably gave her
Probably
shingles.
gave her the
okay?
shingles. Yeah. Nice goal.
I was gonna say, yeah, when I was a kid, I remember they'd say you want to get chicken pox young so you don't get it as an adult when it's way worse.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing about shingles to us at least like 17, 18.
Yeah, well, you didn't know shingles was the result of having chickenpox, and it staying
Right.
dormant.
It's either
in your-
re-emerging or
Yeah,
getting
it
when
was
it's
dormant
first time.
for years, and then all of a sudden it was
So why didn't that vaccine prevent you from getting shingles
say concealed
75,
shit,
60
yeah.
years later?
Because you didn't get the vaccine when you got chickenpox. That's why you got chickenpox.
Can we get a new BioShield that clears the chicken
Chickenpox.
pox from our system? Because that sounds like a good invention. Can we work
I
on that
don't
one
know.
next?
Chickenpox.
Well, actually, this conversation went a lot. I thought we were going to be short today, and actually,
Oh
it took
no,
up some time.
Anyway, I think we came to some earth-shattering. Listen, the only thing I say is that freedom is a two-way street. Okay, I mean you should have the freedom to take that shot or to not take that shot,
Well,
and you should also have the freedom to say, I don't want you in my hospital if you're not vaccinated. Okay, I mean I can understand that too. I don't want you in my medical facility. I won't treat you as a doctor if you think that you don't need to be vaccinated.
I disagree with that.
Well,
I think it depends. If you
why,
have
why
a-
would they be forced
Well,
to do
yeah,
it?
I think-
That's
I
like
think
saying a
matters.
baker had to make that cake
Yeah,
with
so-
2 men on it.
No, I disagree
Yeah.
with that.
Oh yeah, that's a bridge too
no,
far.
I can agree. I would say that if you have like a private clinic, if you're an independent physician practicing solo,
Mm-hmm.
sure. If you're like an emergency room and you won't set someone's arm,
okay, yeah.
or take a piece of rebar out of their chest because they're not vaccinated, the Hippocratic Oath should come first.
Well, Absolutely, just like you don't have to see if they have Medicare or an insurance
Do you think
policy
it-
before
Right.
you
Do you think
I
it was
before you
right
treat them.
of the government to tell you that you couldn't go into a
God.
facility, that you couldn't go into a sporting event unless you were vaccinated? Do you think that was right?
No, I don't think the
Okay.
government has any right to do it
But
at
do you
all.
think it would be wrong of the owner of the venue to say that you can't come in if you're not vaccinated?
Yeah, would you?
That's a good question. I don't know. Probably
Private property.
Yeah, yeah. It's private property. He's got a right to do what he wants. I would think it's wrong. Yeah. Would I
It's
go
just
back
like
to
you don't
property?
have
Yeah.
Fourth Amendment rights when you go into private property. They can search you all they want,
Right.
whether or not you have justifiable reason.
There
You want
you
to
go.
come in my house? I'm giving you a
Bring
complete
it full
pat
circle.
down. Boop, 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 boop. Wait a minute. What about my Fourth Amendment rights?
Yeah,
Do I
it's-
look like the government?
Do I look like
Damn,
the
I thought you were
government?
just doing that every time I came in here because you liked me.
All right, so we're taking a week off next week.
Yeah, we're taking a week off because I'm going to have a colonoscopy.
Which-
Speaking about
Which my mother-in-law, my old Greek mother-in-law, calls it a colocatastrophe, which I think is an absolute perfect
Portmanteau.
Greeklish version of the
having
procedure.
witnessed a good friend of mine go through colon cancer, I have to tell you, if you're over 50, go have one. Okay?
It's like 35 now.
Is it
Listen,
35?
it's
This
it's-
guy
I'm
says
I've
he's
had-
17.
Listen, I've had enough of them. Too many of those. I'll call me. I'll tell you how to prep for it. I'll tell you how to circumvent most of the prep work. Number one.
Oh, you gotta tell me because drinking that shit is terrible.
Yeah. Number two, it's a 5-ticket ride, man. They give you good drugs. Okay, you go wackadoodle for a little bit. It's an absolutely painless. I had a friend of mine that didn't
It's
want
a
to
pain
do
in
it.
the ass.
It really isn't. Don't even say that because it's really not. Okay, but I had a good friend of mine who didn't want to go. Different from the
Yeah.
friend that Danny and I had. He finally went in July and he died by September. And it
Yeah.
is the most
Miserable
treatable
death.
It not only that, but it's one of the most treatable forms of cancer that there is out there. If you detect it early, don't let the test scare you, folks. Go get it done. But we're going to be off next week because Danny's
They don't
going to be
think
in
my-
La La Land passing gas,
Yeah.
which is a requirement. After you take the test, you got to pass the gas.
Yeah, I'm having it in the morning on Tuesday.
And
so
then
they
I
don't
think
I'll
we're
be
going to come
ready
back and we're going to
Jesus.
talk about sports on TV and
Yeah,
music and
the cost
arena.
of sports.
We did a lot of shows at venues that were sporting venues and stuff, and we'll tie some of that into that. But it's getting to the point now where I'm not paying this kind of dough to watch.
You know,
These
I
guys
love
that
the
make
Cubs,
them-
but I'm not going to pay $19.95.
Save it for 2 weeks. Save
A
it
month?
for 2 weeks. All right. So, whose show? Your show. Sign it off.
All right, so for everybody out there, thanks for participating and
Comments?
and good night, Mrs. Calabash, wherever you are.